And a good evening to all of you, my loyal Patreon followers. That sounds almost pompous just to say it like that. I thought that I would give you just a little glimpse inside how I go about making a standard video feature. And what I'm going to be doing now is laying down, as they say, the audio track, the narration for the upcoming feature, The Murder of Aggie Albert. And this is what I normally go through whenever I am laying down the audio for the feature. You can see here I have a sound box, a microphone on the inside, a little shield on the front, and that's a standard setup. When I start to record, I'll put on the phones, which for some reason, for a person who stutters like myself, for some reason when you have the headphones on, you hardly ever stutter. I don't know exactly why that is, but it works. Oh, one more thing. Always before beginning every session, cheers, or night court. Nope, that's in the shot. Oh, I've had a shot. I don't want it in the shot. Okay, so you can't see it. It is out of view. My head is going to get cut off in this particular shot. If you could see the way that my phone slash camera is angled at me now, it is almost comical how I've had to set it up. But I'm going to put the headphones on. I will begin reading from my tablet, which I know to you looks like just a polar landscape. See, that is a polar landscape. To me, there's actually written words on there that I'm going to be speaking. So, all seriousness now, I'm going to put the headphones on, go through the narration, and I'm going to let you see from beginning to end what it takes to create roughly between 20 and 25 minutes of narration. So this is what I look and sound like when I am not standing in front of a camera wearing one of my awkward coats. All right, once I have the ears on, I won't be able to hear you. It's pre-recorded. I wouldn't be able to hear you anyway. All right. Again, all seriousness now. Here we go. Okay. I can hear myself coming across. You can't hear me, at least not on this audio track. So I'm going to start the recording on the machine that you also cannot see, and I will begin to record. Covington, Virginia, nestled among the towering rims of the Blue Ridge Mountains in the southwest. Covington, Virginia is. Covington, Virginia is nestled amid the towering rims of the Blue Ridge Mountains in the southwestern portion of the state. As the county seat of Allegheny County, it is a small town in virtually every sense of the phrase. For most of its 6,000 residents, daily life is comfortably routine. Named for General George Leonard Covington. No. Start that again. That was a little bit rough. That's called a run-through. Covington, Virginia is nestled amid the towering rims of the Blue Ridge Mountains in the southwestern portion of Virginia. As the county seat of Allegheny County, it is a small town in virtually every sense of the phrase. For most of its 6,000 residents, daily life is comfortably routine. Named for General Leonard Covington, a hero of the War of 1812, Covington has been a manufacturing center since 1899. West Vaco, now West Rock, accounts for 37% of the employment. Covington High School, home of the Covington Cougars, is the largest public education center in the city. Its football and soccer teams play their games here, Bodie Albert Stadium. Its namesake was a star player at Notre Dame before returning home and serving for over 30 years as Covington High School's football coach. Francis J. Bodie Albert passed away on July 16, 1974. Today, it is unlikely that anyone in the stands over the age of 40 doesn't know about Francis Bodie Albert. And it is equally unlikely that most are not also aware of the tragedy which struck the Albert family on July 2, 1992, when the life of 69-year-old Aggie Albert came to a sudden and brutal end. Esther Agnes Albert, known to her family and friends as Aggie, was born in Allegheny County on April 19, 1923, the last of 9 children born to Francis and Nomnam Albert. Aggie's family was of Lebanese extraction and came to Covington in the early 1900s. Like most of her family, Aggie spent her entire life in Covington, where she was known as a religious, if somewhat quirky woman with a deep love for her community. Aggie worked for much of her life at West Vaco. She never married, and after retirement, her life centered around community service, Cougars football, and the Zany Follies, a local fundraising effort founded by Aggie in connection with the American Cancer Society. By 1990, Covington's reputation as a quiet Appalachian small town was beginning to tarnish. That year, a series of break-ins and burglaries culminated in the beating and rape of an elderly resident named Dottie Balsey. Her assailants were later captured and convicted. However, the unsettling incident left many area residents on their guard. In June of 1992, another string of crimes, this time a homicide, a series of vandalisms, and alcoholic beverage control violations, prompted the Covington Police Department to increase the number of beat cops on patrol. Sounded a little disjointed. In June of 1992, another string of crimes, this time a homicide, a string of vandalisms, and alcoholic beverage control that doesn't string together very well. In June of 1992, another string of crimes, this time a series of vandalisms and alcoholic control violations, combined with a homicide, prompted the Covington Police Department to increase the number of beat cops on patrol. Once again, the tension in the community jumped up a notch, and local residents began warning their friends and family members to avoid the streets of Covington after dark. Aggie Albert's family was no exception. Aggie's family have described her as something of a night owl. She reportedly had no fears of being out and about after dark and would often ride her neon green bicycle from her home on Lexington Avenue to the Sacred Heart Catholic Church. Aggie was in charge of keeping the church clean and usually opted to work there at night. Ironically, the Allegheny County Sheriff's Office and jail were, and still are, situated directly across the street from Sacred Heart. At the time, local residents would often utilize the small alleyway and alley beyond as a shortcut from West Main Street to Locust Street. Despite the warnings from her family and friends, Aggie would not change her routine. At around 9:30 p.m. on July 2, 1992, she left her home on Lexington Avenue and again drove the 6 blocks to the Sacred Heart Church on West Main Street. It was believed that Aggie's purpose for being at the church that night was to practice the organ and prepare for the upcoming weekend mass, something she did with regularity. Not much about the events of the next 9 hours is known. At approximately 10 p.m., Covington police officer John Hudson walked by the Sacred Heart Church as part of his routine foot patrol. At that time, he noted that the lights inside the church were on, but nothing was seen. Blah, blah, blah. Take that again. At that time, he noted that the lights inside the church were on, but noted nothing out of the ordinary. Noted. No, I said the word noted twice. Say noticed. One. Noted and saw. That'll work. Okay. At the time, he noticed that the lights inside of the church were on, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. At approximately midnight, Officer Hudson again walked past the church, and this time noted that the lights inside were out. If any screams or cries for help were heard, they were either never reported to the authorities. No. If any screams or cries for help were heard, they were either never reported to the authorities or have never been made public. Emphasis on that just doesn't sound right. Let's back it up, try it again. Not much about the events of the next 9 hours is known. At approximately 10 p.m., Covington police officer John Hudson walked by the Sacred Heart Church as part of his routine foot patrol. At the time, he noted the lights inside the church were on, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. At approximately midnight, Officer Hudson again walked past the church, and this time, there's a very low drone coming from somewhere. I believe it's the furnace. And that's what happens. I'll have to give that a second or two to shut off. Yep. And I forgot to turn the furnace off. There is an intake right to my left. Well, if I'm not interrupted by the cat, I'm interrupted by the furnace. This is not the first time. It happens. I've turned it off, so it should catch up and turn off within the next couple of minutes. Not much about the events of the next 9 hours is known. At approximately 10 p.m., Covington police officer John Hudson walked by the Sacred Heart Church as part of his routine foot patrol. At the time, he noted that the lights inside the church were on, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Wonder which way sounds best. At approximately midnight, Officer Hudson again walked past the church, and this time noted that the lights inside were out. If any screams or cries for help were heard, they were either never reported to the authorities or have never been made public. That sounds better on the close. Now, as soon as the furnace decides that I am warm enough and it stops growling, I'll be able to get going. Cat meows and the furnace growls. Oh, dearie. How long have I've already been recording for 14 minutes. And I'm not even past the second page of the script. I wish that would shut off so I could get going. Because now I've just got to stand here and vamp. Because I don't plan on editing this out. Because I want you to see exactly what an entire session is like. And this is what an entire... there we go. All right, the growling has stopped. I've rehearsed. My throat is loose. In 40 minutes, I should be freezing. So let's get going. Not much about the events of... Not much about the events of the next 9 hours is known. At approximately 10 p.m., Covington police officer John Hudson walked by the Sacred Heart Church as part of his routine foot patrol. At that time, he noted that the lights inside the church were on, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. At approximately midnight, Officer Hudson again walked past the church, and this time noted that the lights inside were out. If any screams or cries for help were heard, they were either never reported to the authorities or have never been made public. Sometime before 6 a.m. the following morning, a local resident was released from the drunk tank at the Allegheny County Jail. The man's name has never been released. The unidentified individual apparently walked across the street to the Sacred Heart Church to use the side alley. Instead of a shortcut, he came upon the lifeless body of Aggie Albert lying just outside a side door to the church. The authorities were called. However, the timing of the murder could not have been worse from a law enforcement perspective. Many of the officers and detectives who normally would have been assigned to such a high-priority crime were already out of town for the 4th of July holiday, and Covington Chief of Police Jeff Brown was attending law-related classes in Quantico, Virginia. Stretching matters even thinner, another lifeless body was soon reported a short distance away in the city park along the Jackson River. The deceased was later identified as 24-year-old James Arthur Cade. While things were unfolding downtown, Aggie's 87-year-old sister, Lily, noted that Aggie was not in her bed. Was not in her bed? Oh, I wrote that badly. While things were unfolding downtown, Aggie's 87-year-old sister Lily noted that Aggie was not in her bed and that their shared car was not... Blah, 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 blah. That's what happens when you badly word something. While things were unfolding downtown, Aggie's 87-year-old sister Lily noted that Aggie was not in her bed and their shared car not in its usual place. Unaware of the dual tragedies, Lily began walking in the direction of the Sacred Heart Church, but fortunately was waylaid by an acquaintance before she could reach the crime scene. By this time, authorities had begun the process of sealing off the surrounding area and commencing with their crime scene investigation. Covington police officer J.B. Brofman, who later became chief of police, was first on the scene. Nearly half of the 200 block of Main Street was sealed off. The scene was disturbing. From the outset, it was obvious to authorities that some kind of sexual assault had occurred. Aggie's clothes were disheveled and partially removed. Her brassiere had been pushed upwards, and smearings of blood were noted on the front and left shoulder area. A crime scene unit from the Virginia State Police was called in. Physical evidence, including fingerprints, were taken from the scene. However, law enforcement have remained extremely reticent to discuss exactly what was and wasn't found. According to one account, the one item unaccounted for at the scene was the key to the church's side door. Once the crime scene investigation was complete, Aggie's body was removed by the Loving Funeral Home and taken to Roanoke for an autopsy. The initial report of Dr. Eddie Galarin states that multiple abrasions were found on various parts of Aggie's body. Abrasions and bruising around the neck led Galarin to conclude that death had occurred as the result of manual strangulation. Specifically, Dr. Galarin noted a fracture of the right cornu of the hyoid bone with hemorrhaging at the site of the fracture. Whoever killed Aggie had literally choked the life out of her with his bare hands. Further examination soon confirmed authorities' worst fears. Aggie had not only been assaulted and strangled, but raped as well, a fact which would not be made public for many years. Neither Dr. Eddie Gillerin nor Dr. David Oxley were able to determine an exact not cause time. Neither Dr. Eddie Gillerin nor Dr. David Oxley were ever able to determine an exact time of death. To say that the city of Covington was stunned would be a gross understatement. The public's demand for justice was matched only by its sorrow and confusion. The fact that Aggie had been killed literally within a few steps of the law enforcement center of Allegheny County fueled a palpable sense of fear. Anyone brazen enough to commit such a heinous crime literally within a stone's throw of the county sheriff's office was either very aggressive, very confident, or both. Attention initially focused on a possible connection to the death of 24-year-old James Arthur Cade. However, this was quickly ruled out. Investigation into a possible connection to another homicide from the previous month also led nowhere. Complicating the early investigation was the fact that both Aggie and her routines were well known to literally hundreds of residents. The number of potential suspects was extensive. The number of possible motives, if any, were few. At the time of her murder, we're going into narration here. At the time of her murder, Aggie Albert lived here at 114 South Lexington Avenue on the western side of Covington. The Sacred Heart Catholic Church is located here at 253 West Main Street, just under half a mile and 5 blocks to the north. As is the case today, dedicated parking for the Sacred Heart Church is located in the rear. The parking area behind Sacred Heart can be reached by car via entrances which open onto North Monroe Avenue and North Court Street. The thoroughfare which runs behind the Sacred Heart Church was known locally as Mulberry Alley. The configuration of the buildings which flank and surround the Sacred Heart Catholic Church has changed little over the last 29 years. Aggie Albert's body was found here, in a narrow foot alley which runs along the southwestern side of Sacred Heart Church and opens onto West Main Street. Here, a small set of concrete steps lead to a landing and a side entrance to Sacred Heart. Aggie's murder is believed to have occurred at some point after 10 p.m., so many of the businesses along West Main would have been closed. The small walkway between Sacred Heart and 263 West Main Street is the only open space between West Main and the alleyway behind the church. Aggie parked her car, a navy blue Ford LTD, here, just behind the rear entryway to Sacred Heart. It is believed that she then exited her vehicle and walked along a small footpath which leads to the side entry to the church. I have to stop because my computer went into hibernation, and the recording will stop when I do that because I'm on battery power. The computer is not me. I'm on alcohol power. Side entry to the church. The landing and side doorway are visible from West Main Street, although the space is the landing and side doorway are visible from West Main Street, although the space is quite narrow and a flying buttress partially obscures the area from the northwestern view. The rear of Sacred Heart Church opens directly onto Mulberry Alley and is partially visible from the rear of several private homes which front onto Locust Street. From the outset, the agonizing question was why? No. From the outset, the agonizing question was why. Why would anyone so viciously assault and rape a 69-year-old woman who, by most accounts, was beloved by most of Covington? Was the rape and murder the result of an attempted robbery gone bad? Aggie's sister, Lily, later informed authorities that Aggie had expressed some kind of fear regarding the collections taken at the Sacred Heart Church. However, she could not remember the specific nature of Aggie's concerns. Aggie was in charge of the funds for Sacred Heart's monthly church bingo, events which proved to be a sizable financial success for the parish. The monthly bingos were held in the parish hall, located behind the main building on the opposite side of Mulberry Alley. Was Aggie's assailant expecting her to be carrying a large sum of money? And if this was the case, why the sexual assault? As with any other small town, rumors and gossip. As with any other small town, rumors and gossip often run rampant in the wake of such a tragedy. The rape and murder of Aggie Albert was no exception. One of these rumors cast suspicion on Father Edward Morin, then a priest at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church. It was rumored that some kind of rift had developed between Aggie and Father Morin. One of Aggie's neighbors later stated that her purpose for going to the Sacred Heart on the night for going to Sacred Heart. Let's take that again from the beginning. As with any other small town, rumors and gossip often run rampant in the wake of such a tragedy. The rape and murder of Aggie Albert was no exception. One of these rumors cast suspicion on Father Edward Morin, then a priest at Sacred Heart Catholic Church. It was rumored that some kind of rift had developed between Aggie and Father Morin. One of Aggie's neighbors later stated that her purpose for going to Sacred Heart on the night she was killed was to put away some decorations, a request reportedly made by Father Morin. Another theory centered on a group of transient workers. At the time of Aggie's murder, a large construction project was underway at the nearby West Vaco Mill. Another theory centered on a group of transient workers. At the time of Aggie's murder, a large construction project was underway at the nearby West Vaco Mill. A contingent of out-of-state workers was brought in for the project, and some locals felt that one of the transient workers may have been responsible. However, neither theory seemed to pan out, and no charges have ever been filed against Father Morin or any other suspects. Aggie's case is currently being handled by the Virginia State Police, who took over jurisdiction from the Covington Police Department several years ago. As the investigation into Aggie Albert's death is still ongoing, they have been extremely reluctant to publicly discuss many aspects of the case. Over the years, however, they have occasionally reached out to the public in search of additional information. Most recently, in July of 2019, the Virginia State Police reported that they had again submitted a sample of DNA from the crime scene for additional analysis. The end result, however, was disappointing as the tests came back inconclusive. No further attempts to analyze the DNA sample have, as yet, been undertaken. Funeral services for Esther Agnes Albert were held on Tuesday, July 7, 1992. A crowd, estimated to have been 350 strong, descended on Sacred Heart Church to say their final goodbyes. Aggie was then laid to rest in the Cedar Hill Cemetery in Covington. 10 months later, on what would have been Aggie's 70th birthday, a memorial communion was held at Sacred Heart. A bronze plaque set in Allegheny sandstone was erected very near the location where Aggie's lifeless body had been found. The memorial plaque was later blessed by Bishop David Foley of The memorial plaque was later blessed by Bishop David Foley from the Diocese of Richmond. During his 32-year tenure as coach of the Covington Cougars, Aggie's brother Francis also composed the lyrics to the school's fight song. lyrics which, even now, 29 years after Aggie's death, still carry with them an eerily pertinent message. Do your best and never rest until the season's end. And now, the summation. So I deliver a little straighter. Aggie Albert left her home. Aggie Albert left her, still too low. Aggie Albert left her home at 114 South Lexington Avenue at approximately 9:30 p.m. on July 2nd, 1992. She was driving a blue Ford LTD. While her exact route of travel is only conjecture, the most direct route would have taken her 2 blocks northwest on South Lexington and then 3 blocks northeast to North Monroe Avenue. She would then have turned right onto North Monroe, past the Covington Post Office, then right again into Mulberry Alley. This route is suggested as the entry from Monroe into Mulberry Avenue is larger. No. This route is suggested as the entry from Monroe into Mulberry Alley is the larger of the 2 entry points leading to the parking area behind Sacred Heart Church. It's a long sentence. Let's see if I can tie that together. This route is suggested as the entry from Monroe onto Mulberry Alley is the larger of the 2 entry points, each leading to the parking area behind Sacred Heart Church. Aggie would next have parked her car in one of these 6 spaces. At this location, Aggie would have been in direct line of sight of several private homes directly opposite the rear of the church. It is thought that Aggie next exited her car and walked along this pathway to the southwestern side of the church. That night, Aggie was wearing a blue pullover-type polo shirt. No reference has been made to either her trousers or shoes. Aggie's body was found at approximately 6:30 a.m. the following morning, lying in a narrow alleyway just outside the side entrance to the church. There were signs that a scuffle had taken place. Aggie had been sexually assaulted and then manually strangled. Her shirt and bra had been pushed upwards, and a smearing of blood was noted on her shirt. Numerous abrasions were noted on Aggie's body, most notably on her right hand, chin, and left breast. The autopsy report indicates what may have been fingernail marks on the right and left posterior of the torso and the right rear buttock. Blood was noted on the inner thighs, midriff, and abdomen. No material was found beneath Aggie's fingernails, and none of her nails were broken. Bruising around her neck confirmed that manual strangulation was the cause of death. Authorities think it is likely that Aggie was killed sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight. If you have any information concerning the rape and murder of Aggie Albert, please contact the Virginia State Police at 540-380-5700. Always wait for it at the end. Right? Reach over, stop the main recording of the audio. And that's it. From here on out, what I have to do is going to require me to get close to the computer, so it would be awkward. I hope you've enjoyed this little look behind the scenes, warts and all, at what goes on when I'm laying down an audio track. You've heard the main narration as well as the summation. Now I have to record 2 opening stand-ups and a closing stand-up and put together the opening and closing credits. And then I mash them all together and we have a final piece. Thank you again for tuning in. You're going to see my hand come very close to the camera here, so don't be frightened. Thank you again.